Today I want to kind of rant about why these leverless controllers are really good. Well, in reality, this kind of control, like this hitbox, and it's pretty much just a keyboard, right? It's just a very specialized ergonomic keyboard, pretty much. And what I mean by keyboard is I don't refer to normal desktop keyboards. What a keyboard, in my opinion, from my perspective, is any continuous surface that has pushable keys on it. So this is a keyboard, but this right here is also a keyboard. These 4 buttons are a keyboard, and these 4 are also a keyboard, right? And these 2 also form a keyboard, right? So, and the design of keyboards goes way back, right? I think one of the first places you'd see keyboards are, like instruments. Think lutes, like violins, guitars. Although this technically isn't a keyboard because there are no keys on it, ergonomically the design is very similar, right? Because instead of pressing keys, you press the strings in certain positions, right? You can put keys on the strings and it would function the same way, pretty much, right? So what they ended up doing, because keyboards are good for ergonomics, if you look at aerophones in concerts and all that, they have buttons on it. Like a flute, it has buttons. And you can also, this is where we get the first clue of why hitboxes are good, right? Equally sized buttons are good. You want the buttons to be similar in size. That's one. Let's look at pianos. What are pianos good at and what are they bad at? Right. Now I'm going to bring up some terminology. Let's make the median the horizontal of the keyboard, right? Let's make this the median. Then lateral movements, when I refer to lateral movements, that means side to side. Medial movements are up or down, right? With piano keyboards, lateral movements are great, but medial movements suck, kind of. Right? Often when you learn a piano when you're a child, you learn to play on the white keys first, because switching between white and black keys kind of suck, right? It sucks. But switching to keys side to side is really good, because when you see good players play the piano, when they play different chords, they switch their hand up and down because the keys allow for it, right? You can move your whole, let's say you're pressing the button with your thumb. If you want to press in a black key, you move your thumb up and then go out, right? That's why it's good, right? When keys are similar in size to the thing you move a finger with the piano, the better lateral movements get, right? Now let's move to keyboards. What makes keyboards good, right? Keyboards have a flaw and a benefit. The flaw from keyboards is when you press a keyboard, right? Let me just show this. You always feel like your fingers are kind of cramped. Right? If you just put them down, they're kind of cramped, right? But if you then try to spread them out, they're too spread out. If you want to spread them out too much, they're too spread out, right? Keyboards functionally kind of suck with lateral movement because the keys are either too close together or too spread out. But they're really good with medial movement because you can curve your fingers very easily up and down. Well, they have a design flaw and people try to overcome this, which is the stagger, right? You'll notice some keys are easier to press than others. When you try to move up and down, your fingers make a curve, right? They spread out at the top the most, but when you move downwards, they kind of comb in towards your wrist, right? They go into your wrist. So let's call this the finger arc. The arc of the finger is simply the line it follows when you move it up and down, right? And so when you design a keyboard, it should follow the arc up and down. And keyboards tend to do this, but they do it better for fingers that are on the left of your hand versus on the right. Because of the stagger, when you move your pinky, you see my pinky follows from Q to Z, but my index follows from T to V, and in between you're either stuck between F and G, or you move it to F and then you're kind of stuck between R and T, right? That's the major flaw, and people try to overcome this by making ortholinear keyboards, which is kind of like this one you see here, but they suck even more, right? Why do ortholinear keyboards suck? Because they don't follow right, when you spread out your fingers like on the piano, they don't follow the arc, right? You want the lateral arc makes, or it makes a curve like this, right? That's why pianos are good, because they don't need to follow the curve because they're very long, right? They're the size of your finger. You don't need to follow the curve. But keyboards don't do that. You have to kind of move your finger out and then up to press a far out key, right? Out and up, right? So this is a big problem, right? What ends up happening is some keys with a staggered keyboard like V or R or T are easier to press than, let's say, some keys like Z or X, right? Whereas what an ortholinear keyboard kind of spreads out the fault of each key over all the keys, but it doesn't really make sense from a design perspective, because you can fit the values of each keys to the layout, right? Make less important keys like Z or X harder to press than more important keys than E or N. But staggered keyboards also have this problem. N is harder to press and E also kind of sucks to press, right? Now, so how do you fix that, right? How do we fix this? You make ergonomic keyboards. I picked this one because this one was really weird. What it does well is it follows the curve somewhat well. In actuality, what you want is you want it to, again, come from a very narrow at the bottom to spread out at the top, right? That's better. And it fixes thumb mobility, because normal keyboards, naturally, if you rest your fingers on F, right? On F or J, right? If you're a right-hander, your thumb, if you have a small hand, is on the space bar, but if you got big hands, it's below it, right? It's just below it, right? Now, the problem is you can't really press stuff with your thumb, right? So what really good players do is they tilt their whole keyboard, so you're looking at more like this, right? Why this works for staggered keyboards is you align your finger arcs with the stagger still, so you still have good mobility on your left fingers, but then your right stronger fingers, like your index and your thumb, right, are positioned to press a lot more buttons. That's why pros do this, because it makes sense ergonomically with a staggered keyboard. If you use it with one hand, but if you use it with both hands, it kind of sucks, right? So you want to split up your keyboard so it fits both hands, right? That's why ergonomic keyboards are good. But what this one gets wrong, for example, is you don't want your keyboard, your board of your keyboard to be curved. Why this sucks is because although you maybe it lessens the distance you move with your fingers, what a flat keyboard encourages is the use of your wrist as well to move, right? You want to use both your fingers and your wrist to reduce finger fatigue, but you also don't want to rely on your wrist too much, which is what happens if your keys are spaced poorly. If your keys are spaced poorly, you end up relying on your wrist too much, but this has the opposite effect. You end up relying on your fingers too much, right? So you want a flat board, but then shape the buttons in such a way so your fingers kind of naturally gravitate towards it, right? So this is what the hitbox does really, really well, okay? Right? You see that it has a natural curve, it follows the arc of your fingers, like that. The buttons are equally sized. They're nicely shaped, so if you press it from the side, it's curved a little bit, so you can press it, right, from different points of the button. Now, the buttons aren't too big and they aren't too small, right? If they were too big, you would have to spread out your hand and you would sacrifice the up and down for the left to right, right? But if they were too small, you do the opposite, right? It will make it easier to hit more buttons like this, but way harder to hit them like this, right? Now there are some design flaws with this, but it mostly comes to the number of buttons. A keyboard should have more buttons. If you use it with two hands, right? This one literally has no buttons. Press for your right thumb and your left pinky, or at least one of your thumbs and your left pinky. Don't press any buttons because it doesn't allow them to, which kind of sucks ass. So you basically, if you actually make a good one that's better for general use for games other than, you know, niche fighting games, make sure you have a button for your left pinky and add at least one more thumb button. Okay, probably spread out the hands a little bit more, and then aggressively curve them in a little bit more, right? Make them curve in a little bit more. Instead of this, do this. So you get to have, like, let's say 3 buttons for your thumbs, but you can still move them around and press the same button with the 2 thumbs, right? And you can still press these middle buttons with both of your index fingers, but then you also have an extra button for your pinky. And you can still move up and down. And it's still a bit staggered, so you can do this, right? That would be great. Now actually, what I have here is a very well designed keyboard, right? Why are controllers so good? They have some flaws and I'll get into that. But what is good about these is, right, you see the buttons are equally sized and they're about the same size as the tip of my finger. So if I want to go lateral, I can kind of just rotate and go in between these, right? That's great. That's great. If I want to go medial, if this is the line, right? You can do that, right? Because they're designed to be aligned with the curve of my finger, right? Now the problem with this is it's only designed for your thumb, right? These controllers are great for your thumb, but like half of your things don't do anything, right? You hold it like this, 3 fingers don't do anything. But the D-pad is great, right? Although it kind of throws out a lot of the things that I said earlier about the size of the buttons, the position of the buttons, right? This one doesn't really make a lot of sense to do this with, or this. But how you want to hold this is you put your finger in the little nook, and this is a curve that actually does well, right? It's really good. You put it in the nook and you just gonna rotate it, right? You rotate it. The reason this is good is because the whole controller is designed around only your thumb, right? So you don't really need your wrist because your wrist is locked in from holding it, right? So in this situation, the curve works properly. It's really good. Really good curve design. Similar thing for the sticks. The main problem with the controllers is these, right? Switching between these takes a lot of movement because you can only really press the triggers all the way at the bottom. At the top, it's kind of a pain in the ass, right? And these ones are too far up or too far down, right? So if you end up playing a game that uses a lot of this and a lot of these sticks, you want to end up holding it like this, like this aggressive claw, where you kind of do that, right? Like this. You do this, and it's fucking goofy, but it works, right? So it's got some flaws, but controllers are actually very well designed for what they use. It's just the problem is with controllers is you only use your thumbs, and you don't want to only use your thumbs, right? Why would you want to use only your thumbs when you've got 5 fingers? Right, the main advantage in game, right? The main advantage of using keyboards over controllers is that you can have separate buttons for separate fingers. Even people that play FPS games and play movement shooters, they end up moving moving away from WASD because WASD sucks ass. Because you whenever you move forward or backwards, you have to do like boom and then release and switch back, right? You have this in between interval from moving back and forth, and that sucks ass. So some people end up moving their forward to F, or you like their mouse too. Right, it really sucks ass, and that's why controllers suck ass, because it has that same interval but on every movement button and on every interaction button and every action button, right? That's why keyboards are really good, because you have an action button tied to a finger and the finger's just pressing. It's just doing that lightning fast. There's no intervals, right? Because every action is separate. All right, hope you like my ranting. It's not usually something I do on this channel, but today it is. Hey, you like that, innit? What the fuck is my camera? What the oh my. This is just a pain in the ass, isn't it? Alright, hey. See man, Exorcity Go, dude.